The year is 1997. Sony and Nintendo were battling it out for supremacy with the Nintendo 64 and the Sony PlayStation. Nintendo had made the decision to stick with cartridge-based games for its upcoming Nintendo 64 system because they were more durable and difficult to pirate than CDs. This choice had some drawbacks though. For one, the cartridges were more expensive and time-consuming to produce compared to the CDs being used by Sony and Sega. In addition, the CDs were capable of holding much more data than the cartridges were. Nintendo 64 cartridges held a maximum of 64 megabytes of data, whereas CDs held 650 megabytes. So you can see that's quite a big difference between the two. A lot of developers were more eager to work with Sony because of the increased storage capacity. One such developer, Squaresoft, had just released Final Fantasy VII at the beginning of the year on the Sony PlayStation. This was a massive game at the time and helped solidify role-playing games as a mainstream genre. Up to this point, Nintendo had some great games on their Nintendo 64 console, like Super Mario 64, GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, and Star Fox 64. But it didn't have a true role-playing game. So they began to work on one. And on June 1st of 1998, we got Quest 64. Nintendo 64 games have a certain charm, a nostalgia to them. They remind me of being 8 years old and walking through these horribly rendered 3D backgrounds with an innocent fondness. So just looking at this cover immediately takes me back to those days. I've never played this game previously, and I don't own the booklet or the case, so the cover is all I have to go by. The first RPG on the Nintendo 64. How does it compare to, say, Final Fantasy VII, which came out the year before it? Let's find out. You play as Brian. Brian. Oh, Brian. Every memorable protagonist needs a cool name. Link, Cloud, Samus, Brian. The game immediately starts with Brian talking to some old wizard guy and finding out that he needs to go look for his father. Day of Grief. Have you seen my life, Quest 64? All I have are days of grief. After that, you're free to explore the world of Keltland. And by that I mean you have to, because the game has very little direction. Most of the time you don't know what's going on or what to do, you just kinda run around and look for something. Quest 64 is the only role-playing game I can think of where money doesn't exist. That's right, no buying and stocking up on healing items, which is a shame because you're gonna be fighting a lot in this game. The encounter rate is crazy high, and every time a battle starts, you hear this music. Brian is a mage who controls the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and wind. You can decide which element to use by moving the C-stick in a specific direction. Up for fire, down for water, etc. In addition to this, you're able to choose which element you want to level up and learn new spells for. This is one of the few good ideas in Quest 64. Also, Brian can just go up and hit enemies with a stick if you want. The animation looks pretty weak and pathetic. Is that the best you can do, Brian? I feel like the game would benefit a lot from having free-flowing combat like Ocarina of Time, instead of this weird turn-based system it uses. The game tries to pretend the combat is fluid and exciting, but it's really not. I love turn-based combat, but the combat in Quest 64 just feels so boring and monotonous. Even though you're free to level up whichever element you want, you're going to want to level up the water element since it's the only one that gives you access to a healing spell. And since you can't stock up on healing items in the game, this is pretty much necessary to save you a lot of time and trouble. If you do die in battle, you don't get game over. You just pop up at the last inn you used with 1 HP. This is nice and all, but then you have to walk all the way back to where you died at. And this takes forever because the encounter rate is so damn high. Another complaint I have with this game is the camera. You control it in-game with the B button. Yeah, the B button. Couldn't find anything better to put there, right? Pressing the B button moves the camera behind you. This is useful sometimes, and the camera is usually not a big deal if you're like exploring the overworld. But in a lot of random areas like towns or in a jungle, the camera is just a mess. I mean, look at this. I can't see what's going on because of this stupid tree. This wouldn't be a big deal if you didn't have to aim your attacks in battle. Quest 64 has almost no plot. Something about your father been missing for 30 days and there's a powerful book that's been stolen. It's so paper thin and unimaginative that it might as well have no plot at all. At the beginning, Merlin tells you to go to Dondarran. Once you find Dondarran, the king tells you that their precious orb was stolen by a bandit. Now they are helpless and they need you to retrieve the orb. What kind of kingdom is this? It can't defend its own treasures from one bandit? Once I find the bandit in the forest, he kicks my ass. That's okay though, I forgot to eat my one bread that you get in the fight to heal. So let's go back and try it again. Okay, I've had it. I don't think it's a terrible game. The graphics are vibrant and colorful. Pretty good for the time. It's just really generic and unremarkable. And it's better than Superman 64 at least, right? What's going on here? Get out of here. Go on, get!